Webinar is now live.
Good evening. I know we're going to get started shortly. We're going to give a few more minutes for a few more people to filter in to tonight's town hall before we get started on our presentation and our Q&A session to follow. I think we'll just wait 2 minutes. So it's 7:02. We'll get rolling to make sure it populates a bit more since people are still coming in. Actually, I take that back. It seems like it's filtered out. So at this point in time, first of all, thank you all for joining tonight for our town hall. We are going to go over again our path forward plan and provide a Q&A session to follow afterwards. Again, there will be time for anyone to ask questions, and our goal is to limit tonight's meeting to about an hour. So again, we're going to get started with the presentation now. So as we talked about on Friday, and as our parents received a letter about as well, we are moving forward with our path forward. And what exactly does that mean? Well, first of all, most importantly, it means that coming soon, we'll have 5 half days of in-person instruction for all of our students. Beginning on March 15th, grades K to 4 will return for 5 half days for those families that opt into that option. And grades 5 to 8 will join slowly behind, or quickly behind rather, I should say, on March 22nd. And our self-contained programs will maintain in the program they have been in so far this year. So what has changed to enable us to happen? I know we've received a lot of people are not sure as to what's happened, what's transitioned. And one of the big things, obviously, we've been catching all year, paying close attention to, is our positive cases within our district and our region. Obviously, every week, the state puts out an update for us, and we've watched this very closely and noticed as our region has definitely improved in health-wise and tried to act upon that. We also sent out the survey not too long ago to our parents and heard you, and your voice was very clear that 80% of you felt that you were okay to move to 5 half days of instruction, even if that meant that we were going to reduce our social distancing guidelines. And that was one of the big things that we kept on running into. And our conversations with the Department of Health and Department of Education and their stances on that position in particular seemed to really soften over the past week or week and a half. And we thought that this was something that we wanted to jump on when we saw that change. But we obviously want to keep on, as we have this entire year, really focus on ensuring that the safety of our students, our staff, and our community is our top priority. So to make sure that we can do that, we are going to be moving grades 2 to 4 back to Tabernacle Elementary School. One of the big things that Tabernacle Elementary School has is windows for every one of its classrooms. That's something that we don't currently have based on the number of our rooms in Olson Middle School. So that will definitely increase ventilation for rooms and hopefully create a safer environment in terms of health for our students and our staff. It'll also further space out our student population, our staff population. Again, our goal is to keep our buildings open. Having people spaced out better in the time of a pandemic will definitely help in that. Again, we are going to continue the use of social distancing, but to the greatest extent possible. That means that there will definitely be locations that will fall below the 6-foot guidelines. And when that does happen in classes, we are going to be installing plexiglass on student desks. Again, trying to create those barriers of additional safety points for the students, for the staff. And again, as we mentioned as well, that we are relocating windowless rooms with social distancing limitations in Olson Middle School. So again, the first move we're going to be occurring is moving things to TES for those lower grades. And then the other ones that are maintaining in Olson Middle School will be moving as well to create safer spaces for the student staff and for their learning. And our transportation, we are going to continue to social distance to the greatest extent possible. Obviously, that'll be a smaller extent now with more students riding the buses, but we will continue to have our windows open again to make sure that ventilation is at a maximum. As I mentioned before, in terms of there's moving, so there's definitely has some logistical points behind this, and we are going to be shifting our calendar, as you received notification of on Saturday, that we're moving one of our green days to March 11th, and this will be used to move items. And again, our staff in-service day on March 12th is now becoming really predominantly a moving day. So that way, come March 15th, everything is set up in Tabernacle Elementary School for our students and our staff to resume their learning there. That includes a furniture move, moving student desks, moving teacher desks, moving instructional resources, and moving technology. Because one of the big things we did when we originally had moved our classrooms from OMS, I'm sorry, to TES, from TES to OMS, was we moved a lot of our technology, our smart boards, our access points, and other things to make sure that education could start as we wanted to make sure our building could open and school could open as scheduled in September. Now we have to do a lot of things to move back to make sure the building can run as we want it to be and as is best designed. We are also in the process of reviewing staff schedules to make sure that our students can maintain their current teachers. Now, I know we did send some information out originally. At one point in time, we were considering hiring additional teachers in K-1. We did hear for a lot of parents that were obviously, they understood that plan, but they were very concerned about the difficulty a student would face with trying to build a rapport and learn from someone at that point in the year they have not met before. We heard your concerns, and we're trying to limit that as much as possible, if at all. So again, as we've said to you on Friday night, we said in our letter, and again, as a reminder that was sent out in our newsletter this today as well, we need to hear from you. And you only have to notify us on our instructional model change form if you intend to change the model your student is currently in. So if you're a virtual learner and you want to come to in person, you have to fill out the form. Or if you're currently in our hybrid model and you feel more comfortable moving to the remote model, you have to fill out that form. Otherwise, everyone will be transitioning forward. So anybody in a hybrid learning model will just simply become a 5-day, half-day instructional person, and anyone in remote will stay in that way. And again, as I mentioned before, with more students coming to school every single day, obviously that's going to put more students on our buses. So we do ask if any of our parents are willing to drive their students to school that are not currently doing so, please contact our transportation office to make arrangements with them so we know to include you in that and not on the bus itself. So what do we need to do for a path forward? To be clear, these steps have already been done since Friday. Our Board of Education, and thank you again, approved our plan. That was step one, enabling us to move forward. Since then, we have submitted all of our plans to the county for review, and we've updated our restart and recovery policy at the board meeting as well. And everything, again, like I said, has already been submitted to the county for review for our plan to continue to move forward. So we've moved these obstacles out of our way. So now the path forward is in action. Mr. McKean.
Thank you, Sean. So obviously with the additional grade levels now at TES, grades 2, 3, and 4, we need to modify our pickup and drop off procedures. We are going to now utilize the side parking lot, as you can see in this diagram. It's going to be an area for parents to enter and exit via a loop. This change needs to be made. We need to do this in order to accommodate the increase in the number of cars and the number of students to ensure three things. We want our students to be safe at entry and exit, as well as our parents. We want to be socially distanced at entry and exit to the greatest extent possible. And lastly, we do not want to interfere with the buses as well as traffic on New Road. So we estimate approximately 50 to 60 cars will be entering this loop, dropping off, and then at the end of the day, picking up. We have procedures in place within the building. Staff will be trained on this, and we hope within 2 weeks, parents will kind of get it down, and it'll be able to run as smoothly as possible. There's going to be cones, signage, staff out there directing parents through the loop. And this diagram on Friday, this is kind of a sneak peek. We're going to send this out to families Friday, as well as with a letter, which kind of updates the progress we've made so far just in this short week since Board of Ed approval on Friday.
Thank you. Ms. Gallagher.
So here is an updated look at our classrooms, the progress of it. The desks are coming soon, and the teachers are going to be able to start setting up their classrooms this week if they are ready, as well as next week. This is an additional instructional space, which is our media center. We are using this as a classroom as well, and we're able to maintain the social distancing of this class.
So going back again, our goals of our path forward are very clear. We want to keep our students, staff, and community safe, as we have focused on that in our entire year so far. We're going to continue to do so. We are going to focus on keeping our schools open. Once we move to this model, we want to make sure that our students are staying in-person learning and that we do not have to have our buildings closed for any sort of quarantine period. And again, our goal is that come next year, we're talking about resuming as close to a normal year as possible. Now, obviously, I'm sure the state's going to have some additional guidelines for us to follow, but it's our goal to make sure that when those guidelines are received, we're able to take them, act on them, and make sure our students are able to learn full day, 5-day in person come September. And there. So that ends our presentation portion of this evening. Our Q&A portion, again, as I said, our focus this evening is on the path forward. So we ask that if you do have any questions, that you keep your focus to questions about the path forward. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it is our goal for this evening to last no more than until 8 o'clock. So we ask that all people, if they're asking questions, please try to limit yourself to 2 minutes. And if you have additional follow-up questions after other attendees have asked their questions, we can call on you again. Mr. McKean, is there anybody in the queue?
We have one hand raised so far, and just quickly, I ask that you use the raise hand feature, which Erica Vining has done already. She'll be called on momentarily. You will be allowed to talk. You have that 2 minute, like Mr. Bannon just mentioned. And then when you're done, if you could just do the lower hand feature, that way we know you're done. So that's going to be on you guys to unmute yourself as well as lower your hand. So Erica, the floor is now yours.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, Mrs. Vining.
Okay, Erica Vining, 12 Jessica Court, obviously Tabernacle. So couple of two questions I have for you. The one consideration, I know the hesitation towards full day at any point of this year, which was stated in the last call, is that it's the no mask time. Though I understand that, I'm kind of confused the fact that some of the children are allowed to have snack with no mask. And it's really only a couple, they can eat their lunch. There's plenty of other areas that actually, the districts that are doing this, where they can eat their lunch at their desk, and being able to give a dry run of a full day before the end of this year. Because quite frankly, there's many families concerned, us included, that we have backup plans B and C to go to private schools if this is not accomplished. And the only reason why is that if there is, like you said, changes in September, we've worked out the 5-day kinks already before the year ends, before we need to revamp anything. There's a lot less work that you'll have to do coming in September. So twofold there. I understand it puts you to a higher risk if you're having the kids eat for a longer time with their mask off. But my little one is able to have a snack. I know they move them outside, and in rooms that are ventilated, they're allowed to have them. It's only another couple of extra hours and a quick lunch. I mean, they don't have much time for lunch to begin with. So I beg to ask for consideration of trying to get the goal to get back to some type of 5-day before the end of the year, because there's families like mine that are seriously considering what our options will be next year if we're going into this summer not knowing what's going to happen for 2000. I know it's your goal, and I'm not doubting that it's not your goal, but I'd like to see the kinks get worked out at the end of this year, so if there are any new kinks in September, you've run this, you've worked through it, and you get to the next kind of goalpost that they keep pushing back for you. So if you could address those, that would be really helpful.
Okay. So, Mrs. Vining, to answer your question, one of the big things is first of all, in terms of right now, we've been able to keep social distance when they're indoors if they're the snack time. Again, that's something that won't happen. So as we mentioned before, our current model plan is a low to moderate risk plan in terms of the hybrid spacing, social distancing, the whole bit. The plan we are instituting is what I've been told from all the health authorities I've talked to, is a high to higher risk plan. The highest is because there's not the unmasked time in which you talk about. Moving forward, there will be no snacks inside. Anything that has an unmasked time will be outside, will be social distance, all of those things. And again, in our classrooms, when they're in fully ventilated areas, they're having snacks inside, they're fully 6 foot away, which again is additional protection that will not be afforded. It is something that I understand your concern for that. There are a lot of other limitations in terms of that would also hurt us. Again, our goal is to try to keep our buildings open. And one of the first questions we are asked every time we have a phone call with the Department of Health for a contact tracing situation is there unmasked time involved in this situation? And we want to be able to definitively say no to that because of the model we're moving into with the other risks. As soon as we say yes, it's going to immediately mean that everyone in that room that was in there when the lunch was had has to quarantine. And that puts us at a greater chance of going the opposite direction we're hoping to have, which is keeping our building open. Now, I can tell you, and going back to your question in terms of what we're moving forward to, I am in a ad hoc committee of superintendents in our county that are pushing to get reopening plans given to us. We put an ask in, hoping that we can get them within the next 60 days. We'll see what happens from the governor's office, but I can tell you that plan is out there. We want to be very clear to our families as to what we're intending. And I think from everything we're hearing, and the directions and the positive news this season come out every single day in terms of vaccine rates, things like that, and the health news coming from the governor's office. I do fully intend that having us be able to open for 5 full days is very realistic in that time frame. And moving again, realize we haven't even moved. We've put this plan in place, but we also haven't even had the opportunity to see it in action yet in terms of having our students run this model of the 5 half-day in-person schedule. So I think it's very important that once we get in there, to see it running, to see what happens, and also to judge the additional health risks that could happen from that. But if we keep on trending in the direction we have, I think we're going to see not just from our end, but all the limitations that are in place from us from the state levels for those additional things in terms of social distancing limitations with unmasked time are going to continue to melt away. I'm very, very hopeful. In fact, I think right now, from everything I'm seeing, I would be very surprised. Let's go to that end if September happened and we were not able to do everything we have laid out as planned. Mr. McKean, is there someone else that's raising?
We do. Ms. Reale.
Hello, Mr. Bannon. Thank you very much. I just have 2 quick questions. One, I mean, kind of relates to what's happening now, I guess, as well. But with spring break coming up, what are there expectations? I don't know what the expectations are now, but if people travel outside of our state, not counting Pennsylvania, New York, all that kind of stuff, is the expectation for students or staff to then, when they come back, if the state is still recommending it, to quarantine?
It is, Miss Reilly, and we've been very clear. And I'll give you, we have some amazing parents who have been very upfront with us. Recently, we've heard a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, but some people have contacted us and said, hey, I'm going away during this time. I know I have to quarantine. And we've walked through them either through administration and in coordination with our nurses. And we'll continue to do that. And they understand. And even with the 5 half day, what happens if someone does need to quarantine? That's why we keep the live streaming model in place. They live stream during those days. The days that you are in quarantine don't count against the student for absences, and then they can smoothly transition back to the 5-day in person beyond that time.
Okay, thank you. And then just my other quick question, I don't know if I missed it because I missed a little piece of what you were talking about. I know the school times are staying the same, but I'm guessing bus times will have to shift a little bit just because twice as many kids will be getting on the bus, or no?
That's right, Miss Reilly. There will be some slight shifting in times. I'm sure we're going to work out some of those kinks within the first week or so. But as you hit it on the head, there will be some addition, obviously with additional students, some additional time. So we ask that obviously our families be patient with us. We work out some of those time frames, just changes within the first. Hopefully, like I said, I know our drivers are fantastic. They'll probably have it down within a week, but definitely if not, then by the week that follows, everything will be worked out for us.
Yeah, I don't care if it's later. I just don't, if they show up earlier. My kids have a tough time getting out the door. So that's what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Miss Krista Carbone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Mrs. Carbone. Good
Hi.
evening.
Hi, good evening. I just had a couple of questions. I don't know if just a couple. One has to actually do with the makeup of the panelists. I can't see who's actually on. I can only see a couple people. So I actually was just curious, maybe I missed it in the beginning, if there were introductions of who is actually on the panel, how were those represented on the panel chosen, or were they volunteered to be on the panel? And are the views of those that are on the panel, are all their views, like, does everybody have the same wishes or wants, concerns, or are there differences to those opinions that those that are actually sitting on the panel?
Ms. Carbone, thank you. We'll go around real quickly if you don't mind. We'll have all the panelists. Again, I didn't know that you couldn't see everybody on your viewpoint.
I can just see a couple.
Oh, that's not a problem, Ms. Carbone. Then if we could have the panelists quickly just introduce yourselves. We'll go from there then. Thank you, Mrs. Carbone.
Hi, Krista. It's Meg Chamberlain, President of the Board of Ed. I asked Steve Henske and Judy Saylor to join me tonight as representatives of the Board of Ed. And the Board of Ed definitely has the, we definitely support the administration for this new path forward. And we are definitely looking to September for 5 full days.
Thank you. Are there teachers on the panel?
Yes. Mrs. Kimball.
Hi, Mrs.
Okay.
Carbone. It's Ashley Kimball. I am an officer in the TEA. And so we are very happy to be a part of bringing our kids back into the classroom safely where they belong.
Thanks, Ms. Kimball. Again, I can't see everybody. I thought there was more people. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Can I ask a question just about the path forward, having to do with the kids' schedules?
By all
I
means,
just,
Carbone.
okay, is there so I know the kids, like the specials kind of fluctuate with different grades. Mostly concerned about like, the little ones, so K through 4 or whatever. Are the specials going to be possibly in the afternoon so as to not take up important instructional time for those kids to have in the morning, some face-to-face that they're kind of not used to having with, mathematics, reading, spelling, writing? I just was wondering if that was a consideration to keep the specials as much as we could, or you could, in the afternoons to not take up all of that time.
Understandable, Ms. Carbone. So obviously, I know our Spanish at those grade levels has already become a virtual thing in the afternoons. That will maintain in that way. But a lot of the feedback we also got is in terms of the importance of our related arts providing the social emotional learning piece. It's a great outlet for our students. It's helping a lot of them cope with certain things that they've been dealing with during this time of this pandemic. And that was one of the things that in the other framework that we talked about is although we want to have the academic performance, we also make our students are mentally and socially where they need to be so that they can perform at high levels. And that's one of the great features that we get from our related arts team and from our physical education program. So by keeping those in the morning, the way that we have it, gives us touch points and gives those kids those outlets. And we've heard from some of this, as well, like, please don't move that. That's like my main, like one of my highlights of my day, so we've taken that into consideration as well too. So it's definitely a big balancing act, especially as we know that our teachers have done a fantastic job, even though they're doing so much of the 5-day in person. They also have a lot of virtual groups, remote groups. Sometimes it's their small reading groups and things like that, and the virtual settings as well that can extend beyond their day. And again, kudos to our teachers of trying to find those additional ways to extend the students' day to find things. Even with this model we have in place, I know so many of them have figured out the small groups and things that are, again, are harder because we're talking, even though these kids are going to be in the room, grouping them at times, having them do face-to-face interactions in small groups is difficult. And I can, know that some of our teachers have done really just fantastic jobs of finding ways to use the Meets, to use Zoom, whatever the case may be, to get some of those times in the afternoon virtual sessions that I believe they're intending to maintain as well because of how much success they've had.
Thank you. And it also just takes effect with like talking about structure. A lot of the second grade, and I'm not sure about other grades, I only know about second, like they've not had a lot of structure in their day. So they've kind of been able to do a lot of independent work on their own. And I just, there's a huge concern that these kids since last March, have kind of been doing a lot on their own, walking around, getting up, going around, doing what they want. Like, just so that's a concern that there's a little bit of a grace period when we get these kids back that, a lot of them are emotionally scarred from this, and the structure piece, it's going to be difficult. So, I'm excited that they're going to have that face to face again. Just concerned about, can we have a little grace for them? Definitely like some rules back on board and stuff, because they've just had a lot of independent watching their videos by themselves and, only had one Zoom in the afternoon. So just a concern about their structure. So thank you very much.
No problem, Ms. Carbone. Actually, you brought up a good point too. It's, one of the things that we talked about with our teachers is think about it. When the students come in, it's almost going to be like the first day of school again. They've set those ground rules with these groups they've had. On blue day, the kids know who's in the room, and here's the rules for blue. And they come in the gold and so on. Now, for the first time for some of these kids since last March, they're going to be in the room with their friend, their peer. So we certainly expect, the week of the 15th, especially with our younger learners when they return, That's going to be okay, guys. Now this is our whole class rules and our whole class procedures. And not just that, it's going to be in a whole new building that these kids haven't been in since March. So in some cases, even we have, new students that moved to the district, they haven't been in the building at all. So let's get used to our class as a whole. Let's get used to this new environment, in the classroom, but also our new environment in terms of our learning environment as a whole in the school that they're now going to be in. So we do
Mr.
expect
Bannon, you're saying the first,
space.
so Mr. Bannon, you're saying the first day there's gonna be a lot of teachers screaming, don't hug your friends, don't hug your friends, don't hug your friends.
I feel like you've already seen this, Mr. Heskey.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Ms. Kimball to shake, have to deal it from a teacher's perspective.
Air high fives.
Yeah.
Yes,
High five.
absolutely. But it's the one thing I will say, you bring that up. Our kids have been amazing with this. I couldn't believe within the first week of school how they all, realize the spacing when they're walking outside and doing different things. So as much as, in my mind, I'm thinking it could take, a couple of days for the students then. I think by the end of the first day, they'll probably be like, we got this. We know where we are. Especially, the older kids that when they return to TES. I know I heard a few of the fourth graders are looking forward to, taking their mantle as the oldest people in the building, So I think it'll be very interesting to see how this happens.
All right, we have Mia Dida. I'm going to promote you to talk right now. All right, looks like Ms. Dida is using an older version of Zoom, so I'm going to have to promote her to panelist in order to allow her to speak.
Thank you, Mr. McKean. Good evening, Mrs. Dida.
Good evening. I just had a quick question, and it's an instructional based question. I wanted to know and get a clear definition of in-person learning, and does that actually mean that a teacher will physically be in the classroom? And at this point, have any additional teachers requested to teach remotely with the approval of the new 5 half-day schedule? And is this something that our district is open to?
Well, in terms of the question, in terms of teachers' accommodations, that's not something I can speak on. That is a personnel matter. In terms of students being in, we do obviously have some staff members, as I can speak in generalities, in this one that have been teaching a remote setting. There are certain things that are still being worked on for that. So that's kind of a very flux point right now.
Okay, so it has to be approved. My concern is, I know it's a concern in other districts, surrounding districts, with the teachers teaching remotely with moving to these 5 half days. And I don't know if that's going to present a problem, especially for our younger students. My son is in middle school and his teacher is fully remote, and she's wonderful and it works out wonderful for him. But I also have a daughter in 3rd grade, and not that, I'm not speaking specifically for her teacher, but I know that as a 3rd grader, I think it would present a bit of the more trouble for her to learn that way.
We understand, and we'll continue to work with our staff on what we need to do moving forward as well. But again, like I said, because these are really personnel accommodations matters, I can't really speak specifically on anything, Mrs. Dida.
Okay.
But I hear your concerns. I appreciate you making them clear.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bannon, can I ask a question about that?
Sure. Mrs.
What would the additional cost be if teachers, do take leave? And they're more than welcome to, obviously, but what would that cost look like?
Again, if you're talking about, if we just base it on, let's call it a BA salary. So that's probably the easiest
Right.
point. We're looking at the rest of this year would be around $36,000 for the staff member, including salary and benefits, plus then the additional instructional supplies potentially if need be. If obviously they're just replacing a teacher on leave, that wouldn't be necessary. So it'd just be the cost itself of the staff member.
Is that considered a long-term sub at that point, or would we be, if someone's on leave, are we actually getting a teacher for the last X number of months?
It certainly, ideally, you're able to find a teacher through our sub service, which is a different rate of pay. But as you can imagine, throughout this year, especially as some different districts and transition things, sometimes that is a little bit harder to find subs, as I think they're being tapped out as well. So the other, as I said, so it couldn't be from our subservice and what their rate of pay is, and I apologize, but I'm not sure what their exact rate of pay is for long-term subs. Then it would become hiring a contracted person, which is obviously, I can tell you that is definitely more expensive as a contracted staff member
Okay,
opposed to a long-term sub.
gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we have Dean Dodaro.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Good evening, Mr. Zadaro.
Sir.
I have two quick things for you. I guess one is we're hearing, I guess, in the news that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to be earmarked for teachers. So the question is, has anybody from the governor's office reached out to the district or the county Department of Health with information about that? And then the second part is just consider my family as another family in the camp that would like to see you try out the 5 full day model this school year, not wait till December. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
No problem, sir. In terms of your question about the vaccines, we haven't heard anything specifically yet. I do have my monthly, meeting of our superintendent's roundtable for our county. So that certainly could be something that ends up on the agenda soon. And that meeting will be happening the next couple of weeks. Obviously, I know that the governor made that wonderful announcement the other day to move up teachers and other people. They also today, I think, also further expanded those that are eligible for based on health issues as well. So you're seeing that clearly they're making a move to get more of our population vaccinated and vaccinated quickly. So certainly that'll help. I know from past conversations with the Department of Health, that was one of the big things that they were looking into from their perspective in terms of their eventual recommendations to the DOE to further loosen some of these restrictions. They were looking at, again, not that I have percentages, but they were hoping that a larger percentage of the population would become vaccinated, not just within the educational settings, but in terms of parents and so on, which would hopefully mean that more things get opened up and make sure that we can get returned to a sense of normalcy much faster. So it definitely seems from everything we're seeing from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, from the governor's moves, is definitely leading in this direction. And hopefully they'll keep on loosening up things and we'll again, be able to return to normalcy, not just within our schools, but in our daily lives as well very shortly.
But Sean, to that point, the state isn't necessarily been very forthcoming with nice, clear guidance since this whole thing started.
Very true. Very true.
And the second part that I think we all need to be cognizant of is that the decisions that the administration with the board support have made this year that are going to carry it into next year to get the 5 full days and to utilize TES. We are still going into next year with a $682,000 budget cut in state aid. So, that's going to be a part of the stressors that the board and the administrative team are going to have for the summer, is going to be trying to figure that piece out. And I know that's not part of the discussion tonight, but it's something that when we start talking about all the things that we want to do next year, that's still something that is really looming heavily and keeping some of us, a lot of us up at night, is how are we going to factor that into next year. So, I mean, I'm not trying to play Debbie Downer. I'm so happy we're going to 5.5 days, 5 half days. I'm looking forward to get the 5 full days, but I also would be remiss if I didn't mention the responsibility that the board and the administration team have to address a critical challenge that we will have next year.
Well put.
All right, we have Kate. Kate is going to be promoted to panelist.
Hi,
Good
can
evening.
you hear me?
We can.
So I have a first grader, and I know about 2 weeks ago we got a questionnaire email about if we were willing to move their teacher.
Correct.
And I go to all the board meetings.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up here, but if your question is about if that's going to happen, it's not. That's part of why we transitioned to this way. Okay, so having the plan we're putting in place now enables us to keep the teachers, in particular for those grades, okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything you said.
I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if you were frozen on your end and could still hear us or not. I know you were asking about the survey that was sent out in terms of changing teachers and so on. We had sent that out. We were looking into moving that direction. That was before we were able to get some softening of language from the DOE, from the DOH that enables us to move in this way, which is a lot more aggressive because our first move was going to be to just bring back K-1 with the idea of new teachers. That was also a much more expensive situation than the move we're currently doing to actually bring back all the grades, but just reducing our social distancing.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if I missed something at a board meeting or whatever,
No
but
problem.
okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more person with their hand up, Terry Wiggins.
Good evening, everyone. This is actually Ron Wiggins, 155 Powell Place Road. I have a question in regards to, certainly it appears that it's a very long shot, right, to go to back to full days, 5 days before next September. So my question is what kind of flexibility do we have in regards to curriculum moving forward? Like, what is the plan to help bring the foundational learning that our children have missed out on throughout this whole pandemic? So my daughter would be second grader. So there's a lot of foundational subject matter that ultimately still is compromised. It's just unavoidable. So what is the plan going forward to help bring those children up to speed? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wiggins. So obviously a piece of that is assessing the students as well, seeing where they are, what their needs are, addressing them as we've constantly done throughout this year. We're also working very actively to create a program for some of our students that have been identified as suffering learning loss during this year or not having the gains that we'd hoped on. And that's actually something that the state just came out with recently to give our district some money to create a program, and more information will be coming on that one as we're able to put that into place. But that was something that literally came out very recently that we're still looking into finding out what the state needs from us to provide to make sure we're given the money, so to speak, that's been earmarked to us. And that's something that Mrs. Gallagher and our team will be working on. Mr. McKeon, are there any other questions?
There are no hands raised.
And hey, Sean, to the point of curriculum, we have had a lot of conversations, and I know I've been a huge advocate of pushing the administrative team as well as other members on the board to making sure that we do a good assessment of where our kids are coming out of this. Because I, as having a parent, with 2 kids in the district, am, as nervous as anybody else of what the kids have gone through, the challenges the parents have had, challenges the teachers have had. And, the one thing that like Mr. Bannon said, and I've gotten very schooled by Mrs. Gallagher many, many times on different curriculum, is having that assessment program done quickly and thoroughly, so we know where all the kids are going forward. So, I mean, that's been a big thing that the BOE has addressed as a member of the Ed Tech committee, not the chair, just a member. And I don't want to speak for Dr. Jones, that we continually hammer that point over and over again, especially when they said that we didn't have to do state testing. That one, my flare went up on that one, and I immediately went to Mr. Bannon and Ms. Gallagher and said, "What's up with that?" And they said, "Easy, Steve, slow your roll. We got this, and we have something in place that's going to be able to give us a good insight to how the kids are doing." So
that's actually one of the things too. I know that our state, like you just mentioned, Colonel Hensky, has put in for a waiver. But since that time, the President Biden's administration has come forward and said that they're at this point in time, it doesn't look like they're going to be accepting waivers. So we haven't heard yet back from our DOE in terms of what their response is. There's been talk that it could just be of a summer assessment, which we're not a fan of, because I don't see how to properly do that the correct way, bringing kids in, or we can drive to their houses and assess them. Or I think, as they said, as a potential option might be a fall assessment, could still be acceptable, which would help us to judge, the summer learning loss compared to everything else too. Regardless of whatever the DOE says, ultimately in terms of their state assessments, we as a district have used MAPS in the past for our math levels, for our ELA levels. We will continue to do that. We will have a spring MAPS assessment for our students to help us to identify where they are, to see where they grew as we did that assessment across the board in the fall. We'll do it again in the spring. And one of the tools we've also brought in this year, and this is in particular for 6, 7, 8 students, is IXL, which does give us more analytical perspectives for our students for math and for ELA. And as we move forward with all the pieces we're looking into for curricular resources, we're looking to make sure they have that analytical piece, that they're giving us that knowledge point to see where our students are based on their standards, and trying to make sure that we're using that data then to really inform our instruction, to make sure our students get what they need to make sure that they're fully prepared when they eventually leave our district.
If we're discussing how to do this, you're going to 5 half days. How is that going to impact that schedule in spring?
In terms of which the MAPS testing?
Yeah, all of it, any of it, the MAPS testing, standardized tests, whatever we end up doing.
It would just occur during a school day. Those are really limitations that are, again, we don't know yet what the DOE is going to have. I will tell you, again, part of it is the DOE originally had a webinar training for us scheduled, because they'd also told us that they had determined a way for us to do the state mandated testing in remote settings, not just in person. That training was supposed to happen late February. That training was canceled and has not yet been rescheduled. So we can't really talk about in terms of state mandated testing when we don't know yet from the state what format that will take, or if it's been adapted since the waiver or since everything else that's happening. In terms of the MAP testing, that's something that we've been able to really run very quickly. It does have a minor disruption on their day, but definitely having the kids that they're having that consistency of 5 days in person, it will have less of a impact on their daily operations, let's call it, as opposed to the hybrid environment. So we're hopeful that we can do it very quickly and easily when we put that in place in the spring.
Okay.
And we do have another hand raise, Miss Kelly Kemps, promoted the panelist.
Ms. Kemps, I think you're still muted. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Just going back to what Mrs. Carbone had spoken about with the special possibly being in the afternoon, you said you had gotten feedback from parents, great feedback about having it during their short 4 hours during the day. I was just wondering where you received that feedback, and because I know a lot of parents, including myself, would like to see the core subjects focused on during their short time. And is it possible to put a survey out asking parents what they would prefer? Because I know that kids are getting together. I just saw about 15 kids today playing basketball after school together. Kids are getting together. They're having fun going outside, especially with nice weather coming out. So being that we're behind on math and other important subjects, is that something that we could reconsider, is to having our core subjects just during our short 4 hours?
First of all, Ms. Kemps, that was really for the younger grades. For grades 6, 7, 8, that would be an impossibility because our students' schedules actually change, different classes, different times. So that question really, in terms of changing, would really only apply towards K to 5. And it's also been from, the feedback from our students, not just from the emails I've received from parents as well. But just so you know, if anything, any modifications are able to be done, that is something that is a elementary ability. That is not something that is a middle school ability. Just so you're clear on that part.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. My other question is regarding the green days. Now that we're going to be changing to just in-person cohorts and kids that are all virtual, are we going to be more lenient as far as if kids are not feeling well, do they have the option to stay home and be virtual that day?
Students always have the option, or certainly continually encouraged to stay home if you're not feeling well. I don't want anyone coming to school. That's why attendance has not been a punitive thing for any student this year. But students are not going to have the option to say, today I'm virtual, today I'm this, for our attendance purposes, because we need to know the learning models that they're going to be learning throughout the rest of this year. But certainly, again, that's why it has not been a punitive thing counted against the student. They can still live stream it just for attendance purposes. They have to reflect that a student is not physically present as is scheduled.
Okay, and my last question is, my 8th grader asked me, why can't she go back sooner every day?
Like I said, that's part of it. We have to make the rooms available, and that'll be happening as quickly as we can. And our plan is incredibly aggressive in terms of our timeline. From the time that we saw the difference and the opening, so to speak, from talking to Department of Health and Department of Education to hiring movers to putting everything in place that we talked about with mapping everything to moving in the TES to moving our technology and everything and getting all the resources we need to make sure their students are spaced out. I know from talking, I honestly, this would not even be possible with not the amazing team we have here and how quickly everyone was able to jump into things and get things in action. And then again, to the Board of Education for agreeing to having a Friday night special meeting to approve the plan to make sure we're able to get everything rolling as quickly as possible. And again, I thank them for their willingness to give up part of a Friday night to make sure we're able to get our students back to this model as quickly as possible.
Okay, I appreciate, that we're going to 5 half days, but I just wish we could have done this a lot sooner and everything would have been so rushed. And I think it would have been possible a lot sooner if we had put a little more effort into it, but I'm going to take it for what it is now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, to Mrs. Kemp's point, 2 things. One, I know you explained to me like moving to schools was like a game of Tetris. You got to add a hole to fill it. So, and I think that was a pretty decent analogy. But to Mrs. Kemp's point about are we live streaming all the classes? And if we are, and someone's absent from the class, is there consideration for them to be able to live stream in?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Karnowski, yes, students can live stream when they're not in. It's just the issue in terms of how we have to submit things to the state right now, as well. For
I don't think any of the parents really care about that portion
no,
as
I'm
much
saying
as.
they're always, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Who's not
All right.
here can live stream in. It just
Good.
we have to have it in terms of if they're in-person attendance. That's the issue.
Right. So if
Absolutely.
If one of my little minion decides that they're sick, they can live stream in and I'll see it have an absent day, but I don't really care about the absent day because they still got the instruction.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Similar like we were talking about that's why you have it available just for those that are quarantining as well. That if you're quarantining, you can do the live streaming. And again, if anyone is actually quarantining, that is a day that we can submit as a day that is, not an absent day.
Okay, and the quarantine kids are obviously not absent because they've already opted for quarantine and they're already with the state. Got it. Okay. I can't be taught.
That's a different track.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, we have 4 hands raised. We have it's 7:48 p.m., just a time update. We have Mr. Antelik.
Good evening, Mr. Antelik.
All right, I'm going to disable talking. I'll move on to the next one. Mr. Antelik, if you are able to communicate, just keep that hand up. I'll come back to you. All right, sir? Jen Husted.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, Ms. Husted. Good evening.
I just had a quick question about the revised schedule that came out, and I apologize. I did not look at it on a big screen. It was on my phone. Has the last day of school changed at all? And are those last 2 days still green days? Because there was kind of nothing at the end of the year.
Last day of school has not changed, and the last day are no longer green days. The only green day we have left that is on the schedule is the 11th as part of our moving schedule.
The moving day. Okay. That was all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McKean, you actually muted yourself that time.
Amanda O'Hara is here, and I am unmuted.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of piggyback. I know, Mr. Bannon, I had reached out to you personally before about my concerns with the specials and the classes and how my kids are coming to school for 4 days, and on those days, for 4 hours, 2, possibly 3 days a week, that they were gonna have, they tell me they had music and gym, or they had music and collaboratory, where they're having 2 specials in one day, compounded with a 10-minute snack outside. They're really getting very minimal instructional time by the time they sit down. I know other parents have expressed that. My question is when these kids start back 5 days a week, are we going to start, and I know that you're mandated by the state for the amount of gym time they have to have, which you and I both discussed. I find silly that they don't mandate the amount of time needs to be spent on math, social studies, science, and these subjects versus going outside, jumping on a trampoline for 2 hours like my son does every day. But going back to school 5 half days, is that going to allow you to now separate those specials so that they're not having 2 in one day and taking up so much instructional time? Or are we just kind of leaving it the way it is?
So the 2 in one day you're saying would always be, if it is 2 ever, it is their with related art, and then it would be the phys ed. It would never be 2 related arts on a given day. So as it stands right now, we are in the process of reviewing the whole schedule, but there will be times that you would have phys ed and the other related art. Again, they do have different benefits from different ways, but that is what we're currently operating under. But again, we are keeping, especially for K to 5, Spanish will be maintained fully remote. We have some additional flexibilities with that schedule.
Okay, and then my other question had to do with the I know 2 other parents expressed this, and I agree with trying to give a full day, run. I know you have spacing issues with being able to take the mask off for the lunches, but with the weather warming up towards the end of this year, we do have the opportunity to take a week and give it a try and try to work out those kinks. I just want to throw that out there. I've sat on the grass many times as a child and ate a picnic lunch and loved it. I think it would be socially good for the kids actually to do something like that. So I don't think it's not an obtainable goal for the end of this year. If we could somehow manage it, it would give a lot of parents a peace of mind about September and allow us to work out the cake. So I thought that was a great suggestion. The other thing I have is the 4th graders, like you said, I know it's silly, but they are going to go back to, being the older kids in the school. Are there any plans in place, because my son is a 4th grader, to a clap out, anything like that along those lines that they would normally have in 4th grade?
Sure. All those things we'll plan at a later date.
Okay.
Even last year, we were able to do a virtual clap out for the entire
Okay.
4th grade. So again, our first hope is to, our first goal we have to achieve is getting the students there, finishing the move, getting them going. End of the year activities we'll deal with in due time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we have Jennifer Tyler.
Hi, I just have a quick question, just wanting to know out of curiosity, how many people are on this chat, came to the open forum tonight?
You have 71 attendees plus the 8 panelists now.
Oh, all right, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. All right.
We have Lindsay Labs, all one word.
Guys, quick question. I know that there was a lot of teachers that were looking to not wanting to be exposed to the coronavirus, so they did not, they were kind of fighting doing the 5 full days or 5 half days. What percentage of the teachers are taking a family leave? That's my first part question, if there is any. And second of all, how are we going to substitute those teachers who are taking a family leave from now until the end of the year?
I can't really speak on anything in terms of teachers taking leaves, because that is a personal situation. And I can tell you that if any leaves do come up or have come up, we'll continue to fill them as we have, either with subs or if it became a longer term thing with a contracted teacher if need be as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Rebecca Warren.
Rebecca Warren, 18 Worrell Road. I guess I had like two questions. One would be, I know that there's a lot of schools that are doing lunch at their desk in the middle of the day. So is there a reason why the kids can't eat lunch at their desk and snack at their desk?
They're actually doing them, Mrs. Warren, from talking to schools, but they're in social distancing. So a lot of that's one of the big things that's different from us. From talking to a lot of other schools that are doing things like that, they've maintained 6-foot social distancing. We put the priority on trying to bring more students back, moving away from the 6-foot distancing, and therefore we have to do everything as safe as possible to make sure our buildings stay open. Again, as I said earlier, one of the big questions that keeps on coming back every time we talk to the Department of Health, which has happened way more often this year than I wish, is there unmasked time? What's going on here? And as soon as we have that question as a yes, we're then having we're going again the opposite direction we want. We want our buildings to maintain staying open this entire year. If we're doing unmasked time, eating in the classroom, we're putting ourselves at a very, very high risk of going in the opposite direction we all want and desire.
Okay, yeah, because I know my fourth grader mentioned that sometimes he stays in the class and the windows are open and eats snack, which is fine with me because he's so tiny, he freezes out there in those pods. And also he's not interacting with kids, which is what he misses from like the traditional snack time and lunchtime. So, and then I guess I just wanted to say Murphy's up for re-election this year, so we should all get out there and vote.
Thank you, Mrs. Warren.
All right, we have Ms. Krista Crilly.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Hi. So I have the added benefit of being a parent in Tabernacle, and also obviously I'm a teacher there. So I get to see all the ins and outs of everything that's going on to make this happen and to make this work. And I just wanted to say thank you to our administrators and to all of our staff, because they have been working very hard to get this up and running, and it's a very quick up and running. So I just wanted to personally say thank you to the administrators and to our staff, because they are really rallying to get the kids back to the 5-day.
Thank you, Mrs. Crilly. I think we have time, Mr. McKean, probably for one last person.
All right, we have Fran D'Antonio Jealous.
That's all right. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so let me help you out, Mr. Casey. It's D'Antonio Gillis. Thank you. 3 Avenue A Road. And I have 3 things. One is to piggyback the private school. The private schools are and have been 5 full days since September. They eat lunches at their desk, and they've only been quarantined once. And this is a school in Trenton. So if you'd like the name of the school to get some tips, I can send it out to you. Number 2, Mindset Fridays. I know the kids were only going to school 2-3 days a week. So Jim was being interrupted on Fridays for Mindset Fridays. They were doing, I guess, like talking and working with each other. Is that still going to go on Mindset Fridays, being that I know I have a boy, they like gym, they like 9 Square. So just kind of throwing that out there. I don't know if we're keeping that. And then last thing, piggybacks another parent. I'm sorry, I forgot her name. I know you're not allowed to talk about teachers and who's taking off and who's going fully virtual and whose family. I know you can't talk about that. However, you and I had a very heated conversation about not being notified about a virtual teacher. So I'm just suggesting to you that you let the parent know that the teacher's going fully virtual, because this could be an issue for them. Because I know there's only 6 kids in the geometry class, and I don't know if she's coming back not or either. So now he's going to sit in a classroom watching the computer while you have a teacher in front of the room teaching a full class. So that's something you might want to consider as well. letting the parents know ahead of time so that way they can prepare. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Gels.
We do have Keith with his hand still up.
I have one last time with Mr. Antelik before we end our night.
All right, man, I made it.
There he is.
All right, great job, everybody. You guys are crushing it out there. 5 days a week, half days. All right, we'll get the full days soon enough, I hope. The one concern I have, which has already been shared, is, since these kids are only going to be in school like 4 hours or whatever it is, I would really urge to maybe put the specials all virtual in the afternoon. Gym, music, I think those are all very important things in life. My kid's in taking piano lessons, my other one's in gymnastics. So I do find that they're important because I am paying for them. But if there's any way that we can just really push the core subjects while they're there during the day, would be fantastic, So anyway, that was my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Antelik. All right, as of now is 8 o'clock. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening for our town hall. I really appreciate all the parents that did turn up to spend part of the evening with us and for all the questions you asked. And again, thank you as well to our panelists. Thank you for coming to sit on this panel with us, answer these questions. I hope everyone has a fantastic evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.